Welcome to the meeting, members. We have a quorum. Item 1 on the agenda. The Secretariat issued an information paper some time ago. It's included in the agenda. Members, please refer to that. It's a letter from Mr. Tang Fei dated the 3rd of November. Date of next meeting, the 9th of December, Tuesday at 10:45. It will be earlier than usual. There will be just one item on the agenda. So it's Capital Works Reserve Fund Head 710 Computerization Subhead A007GX Block Allocation New Administrative Capital Computer Systems. Well, there was already discussion there, so it shouldn't be too complicated. Well, we have a large turnout from 3 bureau. We have 3 secretaries here to share with us their broad policies. Well, first invite them to join us, and then we'll talk about possible visits of new technological developments. You could press the button later, but first let us invite the officials to join us.
主席，關於我哋嗰度咧，就喺其實文化創意產業嗰個 paper 嗰度咧，揸住楊潤雄嗰度咧，佢淨係個電影發展基金裏邊嗰啲事咧，就關我哋呢個委員會事嘅。
其他唔關事。
係啦，其他嗰啲咩體育啊嗰啲唔關我哋事。
好啊。
咁所以members 問咧都係集中問翻喺
電影文化、電影發展。Thank you。首先歡迎
First of all, I would like to welcome a large team of government officials, and we have 3 Directors Bureau here to attend the meeting of this panel, and they will tell us about the future work ahead. We have Professor Sun Dong, Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry, Mr. Algernon Yao, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, also Mr. Kevin Yeung, Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism, and other government officials attending the meeting. Thank you, or welcome to. Now for the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau, its portfolio actually is relevant to other panels as well. And so other panels will also be having a policy briefing session with you. And for us here, we'll just focus on film development. As for sports and other issues, they are not to be covered by this panel. So members, please note that. For paper number CB bracket 1747/2022 brackets 202, 03, and 204. First, Professor Sun will speak, to be followed by Mr. Algernon Yao and Mr. Kevin Yeung. So, please. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. It is my pleasure to attend the policy briefing of the panel on information technology and broadcasting today. I will first highlight the key initiatives in the policy address under the Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau, and I'll be happy to answer members' questions later. This government has set the clear objective of dovetailing with national strategies to create strong impetus for growth. INT is the key driver for Hong Kong's economic development. For Hong Kong to move full steam towards the vision of developing into an international INT center under the 14th Five-Year Plan, we will promulgate the Hong Kong INT Development Blueprint next month to set out major policies and put forward recommendations under 4 broad development directions. These directions are: 1, enhancing the INT ecosystem to achieve reindustrialization in Hong Kong; 2, enlarging the INT talent pool to create create strong impetus for growth-free, developing Hong Kong into a smart city to improve the quality of life of our people. And 4, integrating proactively into the overall development of the country and consolidating Hong Kong's advantages as an international city. In this policy address, the series of new initiatives under the 4 directions were announced. The key initiatives are highlighted below. 1, on enhancing the I&T ecosystem to achieve reindustrialization in Hong Kong. The policy address announced 1, establishing the $10 billion research, academic and industry sectors 1+ scheme to promote the commercialization of research and development outcomes. 2, collaborating with the Officer for Attracting Strategic Enterprises Oasis to bring in high potential or representative I&T enterprises to Hong Kong. 3, pressing ahead with reindustrialization on the forefronts of organization, infrastructure, capital and technology. And 4, moving full steam ahead with the construction of the various I&T infrastructure facilities. On enlarging the I&T talent pool to create strong impetus for growth, we will work with Oasis to attract leading I&T talents to Hong Kong. We will also enhance the technology talent admission scheme, improve accommodation support and expand the STEM internship scheme. 3, on developing Hong Kong into a smart city to improve the quality of life of our people. We will conduct a service-wide e-government audit for all government departments by the end of next year and put forward recommendations for enhancing the information technology systems and services of government departments. Our aim is to turn all government services online in 2 years and realize a single portal for online government services by fully adopting I Am Smart within 3 years for the convenience of the public. At the same time, we will continue to actively open up more government data and encourage public and private organizations to follow suit for innovative industry applications. We will also explore with the relevant mainland departments the arrangements on the flow of data from the mainland to Hong Kong with a view to jointly promoting the coordinated development of smart cities in the Greater Bay Area. On the 4th area, on integrating proactively into the overall development of the country and consolidating Hong Kong's advantages as an international city, we will study the trial implementation of a cross-boundary policy on I&T cooperation on the basis of One Zone, Two Parks. We will also proactively attract overseas I&T enterprises to the Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park in the Lok Ma Chau Loop. I&T is the key engine driving Hong Kong's high-quality economic development. We will integrate with national policy strategies with precision. We will seize upon the immense opportunities brought about by national development and actively and properly implement various policies. We will also spare no effort in developing Hong Kong into an international I&T center and a more advanced smart city. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sun. Before I invite another Director of Spirit to speak, if I may add here, now we would very much like to visit the relevant departments of the Innovation and Technology and Information Technology and Industry Bureau so that we could learn more about your work. I wonder if you could make the arrangement, Professor Sun. And in particular, we're interested in design centers, smart city development, laboratories on smart city, and also for the Science and Technology Park. There's been some reform there, so we would like to learn more about the latest development. So Professor Sun, could you help to make the arrangement? No problem at all. Next, Mr. Algernon Yao.
Chairman, members, the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau will actively foster the development of telecommunication services and broadcasting services, implementing the new measures announced in a policy address with a view to consolidating Hong Kong's status as a regional communications hub and creating stronger impetus for Hong Kong's development. The policy address emphasizes developing Hong Kong into a smart city to improve the quality of life. 5G development brings vast potential to innovative commercial services and smart city applications. Advanced mobile communications infrastructures are crucial elements in fostering the development of a smart city. In order to facilitate the operator's installation of more radio base stations to further extend the 5G network, through amending the Telecommunication Ordinance, CAP 106, and the relevant guidelines, we will ensure that the new buildings have appropriate space available for telecommunications operators to install mobile communications facilities. We have already started laying the groundwork for consultation with the trade in the hope of introducing a bill to the Legislative Council next year. The CEDB will continue to implement a series of measures to promote 5G network and services, including based on market needs, providing appropriate spectrum in a timely manner, making available government premises and structures as far as practicable, streamline streamlining application procedures to allow operators to install mobile communications base stations through the Anti-Epidemic Fund, providing a subsidy scheme of $100 million to encourage the early deployment of 5G technology and providing economic incentives to encourage telecommunications operators to extend fiber-based networks to villages in remote areas. In addition, in respect of the real name registration system for SIM cards, the government has, since the 1st of March, started the registration of real name registration system for SIM cards. All new SIM cards issued thereafter have to complete real name registration prior to service activation, whereas the SIM cards sold before the 1st of March should be registered before the 23rd of February next year. Otherwise, they cannot be used. Since the real name registration system mainly affects stored value cards, the government will continue to roll out support measures to assist needy persons in completing real name registration as soon as possible. Since this February, we have already launched a series of publicity measures and support measures, including government promotional clips, posters, pamphlets, thematic websites, etc., to step up publicity in relation to the real name registration system. Since the 30th of May this year, 18 designated post offices across the territory have set up a real name registration service counter to provide free registration services. The government has also set up an inquiry hotline and discussed with social welfare agencies support measures on a number of occasions to help needy groups, in particular senior citizens, to complete the real name registration. With the registration deadline nearing, the government will set up publicity and support measures in a bid to help needy phone users to complete real name registration as soon as possible. The CEBD and the Office of the Communications Authority have maintained a close dialogue with telecommunications operators to undertake a series of monitoring and enforcement actions, ensuring that telecommunications operators have implemented real name registration in accordance with the law. The process has been smooth so far. OFCA, in recent years, has strived to adopt a multi-pronged approach to work with law enforcement agencies to combat scam calls. Since August 2015, telecommunications operators have been requested to add a plus sign to the calling number display for all calls from outside Hong Kong, with a view to helping citizens to identify suspicious calls from outside Hong Kong. In light of the increasingly rampant scam calls in recent months, led by OFCA, the police and major mobile telecommunications operators have set up a special task force, jointly researching into and implementing feasible measures to step up efforts to combat scam calls. Under the coordination of OFCA, major telecommunications operators are actively following up on the specifics of the measures and enhanced network management, as well as acting upon police information to block suspicious calls. OFCA will continue to hold task force meetings to coordinate and follow up on the implementation of related measures, joining hands to safeguard the integrity of telecommunication services and the safety of the communications network. Hong Kong has a vibrant broadcasting industry. The government has been committed to adopting, facilitating, and pro-competition policy objectives to assist the industry. The current-term government attaches particular importance to national education and youth development. It will encourage local television stations and sound broadcasters to broadcast more programs on youth and national development in order to foster youth development and enhance the sense of national identity among the public. Regarding broadcasting licenses, the Communications Authority is conducting a midterm review in respect of 3 local free television licenses and 2 sound broadcasting licenses to improve the services to be delivered for the remaining period of licenses. We believe that the Communications Authority will submit recommendations to the government ASAP. I understand that the work of RTHK is close to the hearts of members. In the past year or so, RTHK has got back onto the right track, ironed out problems, and in general completed the implementation of the recommendation in the governance and management of RTHK published last year. It will continue to implement the public's purposes and mission under the charter of RTHK and will strive to assist the government in telling the good stories of Hong Kong and telling the good stories of China. The work RTHK will undertake is as follows. First, enhancing the cross-media multi-language broadcasting to keep expatriates in Hong Kong as well as people in the mainland and overseas apprised of the latest developments and appeal of Hong Kong. Second, positioning RTHK TV 32 as a live information channel to enhance the dissemination of government information. Third, providing more programs for citizens to enhance their understanding of the country, as well as broadcasting more mainland programs or program channels on RTHK, with a view to cultivating patriotic sentiments of the public. Fourth, producing more programs fostering the development of sports and promoting social inclusion to sustain sports mania and building a career-inclusive society. This concludes my introduction. My colleagues and I are willing to answer members' questions.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. Next, Mr. Kevin Young. Thank you, Chairman. The SL government has been committed to promoting the development of art, culture, and in creative industries. The paper has already spelled out the key initiatives in the policy address in this respect. On the development of art and culture, it's closely related to the creative industries. They are complementary to each other, and they could lead to strong synergy effect. Hong Kong has well-established culture infrastructure, and global networks become one of the top 3 global arts markets. And under the 14th Five-Year Plan, Hong Kong is to develop into an cultural exchange center where the East meets the West. So it is a full recognition of our development over the years, and also will bring many opportunities to the sector. As the chairman pointed out, in this session, we are going to talk about film development, and then at the other panel meeting later, then we will focus on other aspects of my bureau. Now, we have the many important commercial platform for the arts, culture, and creative industry in Hong Kong that includes the world-renowned Art Basel, and also the Hong Kong international film and TV market, where filmmakers could discuss investment with investors. We will continue to promote these policies, and so that we could build even better ecosystem in Hong Kong. Now, pop culture showcases Hong Kong's distinct feature. It's also a key driver for our economic development. Starting from next year, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department will start hosting the Pop Culture Festival. The first stage will focus on pop culture iconic characters of music, film, and television dramas from the 1960s to the 1990s. This will highlight our leading role in pop culture in the Asia-Pacific region in our golden age, and also our creativity and embracing cultures of East and West, South, North and South, as well as old and new. And also, in recent years, Hong Kong produced films and TV variety programs have been very popular. So we will also attracted an overseas audience. So we will continue to promote such development through the film, TV, and streaming channels. And then there will be 2 special funds. That is the Hong Kong Asian Film Collaboration Funding Scheme and the Content Development Scheme for streaming platforms. For the first scheme is to help give funding to film projects co-produced with filmmakers from Asian countries to produce films which are rich in Hong Kong and Asian cultures, enabling Hong Kong films to go global and enter overseas markets more easily. The second scheme is to provide funding for content development for streaming platforms and nurturing cross-sectoral production schemes. It will also help to promote exposure of Hong Kong productions, and then it's about also entering new markets. And then for the more exposure of Hong Kong productions in the film and TV markets elsewhere. So these 2 schemes together with the film production financing scheme and the first feature film initiative, the Hong Kong government has set aside $240 million for further promotion of film production in Hong Kong. And then we also support local TV stations co-producing variety programs with mainland and Asian teams. We will also be looking into suitable policy measures. For example, through the enhancing the Create Smart initiative, we could provide suitable support for the local film and TV industry. And then more will come to learn about our distinct pop culture. We could also train more talents as a result. And then with the CISI, Hong Kong will play a leading role to encourage cross-sectoral and cross-cultural collaboration, and then there could be synergy. It will help to bring about more diversified development of the creative industries, and such collaboration can cover many areas such as animation, tourism, fashion design, pop music, film, and so on. We will also continue to promote Hong Kong's development as an art, age, culture, and creative industry center, so that Hong Kong will realize its position as East meets West international cultural exchange center, stated under the 14th Five-Year Plan. We'll continue to nurture creative talents in Hong Kong and open up new markets, so Hong Kong will become Asia's creative capital. Thank you. So 8 colleagues have asked to ask questions, 4 minutes each. With questions answered, I'll first read out the names. First, Mr. Michael Tan, Dr. Johnny Ng, Mr. Lam Chun Fai, Mr. Tan Fei, Ms. Elizabeth Court, Mr. Sunny Tan, Mr. Holden Chow, and Mr. Duncan Chiu. Mr. Tan. Well, there are 3 officials. Can we have 5 minutes to show up? There could be a second round. It depends because we have to hand over this room at 4:30. So, sorry. About working together with operators to combat a phone scam. I'm sure you all have received calls claiming to be from the Department of Health or many other bodies. And then and there were only 8,000 such phone scam cases before, but now we have over 20,000 cases. Mostly, these calls were from overseas. I understand the OFCA has already done something, is added this plus sign, so people know it's an overseas call, just to alert people. Well, why can't you go one step further? Can you not force the network operators to do a bit more? Now, some experts tell me that, phone calls are, passed on a level at a time all the way to Hong Kong. So if you want to, you could always trace the origin. So there's, you could actually at least block these calls. Most of this phone scam calls came from overseas, and usually there are this middleman, and then you could perhaps you could trace the middleman. You could then block their calls for several hours. So and then before you would allow access to the service, because if you do that, then it will work, because banks could do that in Hong Kong. So I'm sure the telecommunications operators in Hong Kong could do that too. There are just a handful of such operators in any case. Now, I approached the OFCA hoping that some sort of a code of conduct or KPI could be formulated so we could deal with this issue as source. So can you tell us when you're going to do it, OFCA? Now, Professor Sun said Hong Kong is an innovation and technology center. We want to bring talents here, so that means there must be protection of their IP, in particular patent. Now, of course, if people have patents, they won't consider the Hong Kong market first. They will consider the mainland market first. So mutual recognition of patent is the most important issue, as many have told me. But then the government told us that because of territorial issues, this may be difficult. But Hong Kong is part of China, and then you talk to me about territorial issues. Does it mean that we just locked in discussion that there could never be mutual recognition? So can we fight for that? Mr. Algernon Yao first. Thank you, Mr. Tan, for your questions. Can I invite Mr. Wong, the Commissioner for the Director General of Communications to answer the question, Mr. Leung. Now, we have already formed a task force with the operators. Hopefully then we could we'll focus more on network management, and then we could help to combat phone scams. I will tell you what we do usually. As Mr. Tan pointed out, some of the calls came from overseas. So usually there may be the display of plus 852, and for the number itself, phone number itself, is already fake, of course. So the first thing we're going to do is to block or intercept calls. That is, if we see that it's a plus 852 number display, but then that call actually, or that phone number is not in line with our usually numbering system, that is with more than 8 numbers or fewer than 8 numbers. Yes, I know, but what about the middleman? Can you block the middleman? I think we have to be very careful there, because under the Telecommunications Ordinance, we have to make sure that we cannot catch innocent parties. So we must first confirm these are fake phone numbers before we could block them. Of course, there is a filtration system with some sort of app. There are scam, junk calls management app, and then we know these phone numbers are definitely involved in phone scams, so we'll be included in a database, and then there'll be some sort of filtering of such numbers. And then we are also in discussion with operators on an alert system. For example, if there's a number displaying at +852, there will be some sort of sound or notification that this call comes from overseas. That will help to the public to be more alert. So we're doing this slowly, and hopefully there'll be more operators joining us in this effort. Apart from calls coming from overseas, some are still using the prepaid SIM cards to make calls. For the real name registration system will only kick in February next year, but then in the interim, we see that people are actually using the prepaid SIM cards to commit phone scams. We will pass on information to police so they could suspend such numbers. Professor Sun, thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tang, for mutual recognition of patents, that's a very important subject, and we're in discussion with the mainland on that. And we have said many times that we need to enhance the flow of creative elements in the Greater Bay Area, and that, of course, involves IP protection, intellectual property rights protection. Now, if there are R&D outcomes not properly protected by law, well, we have to deal with it because many of us have expressed that point to me. Now, for the market in Hong Kong, we have a relatively smaller production market, so that's why our patents have to be sent overseas for mass production. So that's why most of the manufacturers will just be producing commercializing outcomes with that patented outcomes on the mainland and overseas. But then we will follow up on this issue in our effort to promote reindustrialization. Dr. Johnny Ng, thank you. Now, the policy address does mention Innovation and Technology March. The policy address is proposing a $10 billion RAIS plus scheme, so that there could be at least 100 R&D teams set up in universities. And there will be commercialization of the outcome. So is there a cap, and what is there a time limit, and what if there are fewer than 100 applicants, or if there are more than 100 applicants, then what would you do, and how do you measure the performance of the scheme, some sort of KPI that is? Professor Sun, thank you. Well, the scheme is simply to adopt this new measure so that we can turn from 1 to N, go from 1 to N, and that is a commercialization of R&D outcomes. Now we're going to start this scheme next year. We'll be receiving application in the second half of next year, but then it will not be possible probably for us to select the 100 teams in one go. Perhaps there will be several phases, so it will be going on for some time. And our KPL is straightforward. That is 3+2, 3 years for transformation and realization, and then 2 years for commercialization. And so the KPI is definitive. And then we have to look at R&D outcomes. Now we are talking about life science and health technology, and it has to be advanced technology. And also there must be a good degree of market participation. Why is it our scheme is management based? That is, we invest in $10 billion. We want the industry to also contribute $10 billion. So universities, well, there'll be matching with universities, and then we want the other sectors. For example, the Innovation Technology Fund could help also to bring in relevant enterprises, and then there could be earlier collaboration. Of course, there will be other factors to consider. Now, we will try this scheme for 5 years. If it works, we would like to continue with the scheme. But of course, we are rather confident that the scheme will be a success. Anything else, please? No, that's all. Thank you. Mr. Lam Chain Singh.
Thank you, Chair. This policy address, in terms of innovation and technology, indeed made a lot of mention in this respect. And I'd like to know more about this, whether the government has done anything in relation to reindustrialization or innovation and technology manpower planning in the coming decade. And I'm talking about a more comprehensive manpower planning instead of just some high-end R&D talents. Of course, they are important as well. But then when you want to foster the development of reindustrialization, these emerging new enterprises will create job vacancies of different levels. And for frontline positions and for basic level positions, there are some workers in lower level and in the medium level with fundamental training. They can also join this industry. This situation is similar to the 80s and the 90s when industry, changed to the service industry. And if we have a rather comprehensive planning, instead of just focusing on high-end talents, and how much manpower we need for more basic and frontline positions so that we have human resources for different levels, then this will be more ideal. This is the first one. The second one, and I'd like to know more about the Commissioner of Industry, who will monitor and coordinate reindustrialization. There are departments supporting industries. Will there be any overlapping in fact, or is there any special function of this role? The policy address mentioned attracting 100 high potential and representative innovation and technology enterprises to come over to Hong Kong to set up their business, including 20 leading enterprises. Does the government have any preliminary targets after communicating? How likely are they to set their roots in Hong Kong, or how can we attract them after improving our business environments? Thank you, Chair. And I also thank Mr. Lam's 3 questions. For the first question, I'd like to invite Mr. Mack, Permanent Secretary, and I will take the following questions. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lam's questions. Regarding the question on manpower, this is indeed a very important issue. Innovation and technology industries have an important element. That is to say, we have to have enough talents at all levels, whether it be higher end people or even more frontline officers. And we have received comments from the trade. If you have paid attention to the policy address, it actually made a lot of mention of talents. When it comes to higher end talents, there is also a plan, and there is also a list of talents. There is a scheme as well regarding innovation and technology talents. Indeed, there is no lack of measures, including introducing talents from overseas and improving the scheme, introducing talents into Hong Kong and upgrading talent database. And of course, regarding their accommodation, we have comments. Mr. Lam mentioned whether we have a longer-term planning. It was actually mentioned in a policy address. The government will conduct a manpower projection in the new round. Regarding government's manpower requirement, there will be a more detailed analysis, and the projection is scheduled to complete it in 2024. So this will not be finished until 2024. Do you have any preliminary idea? It is just 2022 right now. Then there's still a long way to go. For example, how many people do we have at different levels? You can actually ask the Labor Department. Are you going to provide to me only in 2024? I cannot accept it. Can you? Let me take this question. Your concern is actually related to the second and the third question that I'm going to answer. First of all, regarding the Commissioner for Industry, this position will be mainly responsible for monitoring the new innovation and technology and the relevant strategies, especially when it comes to health sciences, AI, data data mathematics and new energy science. And for industry directly related to industry and to Internet of Things. And it will collaborate with the Office of Introducing Talents. And this role actually is different from the other department in the government, and it has a clear division of labor. Regarding the third question, introducing 100 enterprises and leading enterprises to Hong Kong. We are actually working hard on the preparation, and we are laying the groundwork. We think that the pressure actually comes from the so-called leading enterprises. How do you define leading enterprises? Without actual business. When it comes to Hong Kong, can it be said to be a leading enterprise? For some enterprises that do not have a big name, but then they can generate a lot of income, we think that this can be put under the category of leading enterprises as well. We hope to expedite our work, and we hope that at regular intervals we will make announcements to the public the information in relation to introducing these enterprises, and we can also make it clear to the world that we are actually committed to fostering the development of innovation and technology. Some leading enterprises, when they come over to Hong Kong, we request that they employ quite a large number of local staff members. This is actually a very clear goal. And how much can it contribute to the local GDP? These will also be covered in our plan. This also involves, as you said, the middle and lower level positions. So we are projecting that according to the estimate of the OASES, we will introduce a certain number of talents. This is a very clear KPI. So when hundreds of enterprises are introduced into Hong Kong, and how many positions of reindustrialization can be generated, this will be involved. I can also add something for Mr. Lam. How can we understand reindustrialization in a concrete manner? Can you give us some figures? This is our future goal. We have to work towards this goal. At least we have to be able to tell something in relation to this goal. For example, Secretary Mr. Yang said that in 2020, there are over 16 billion, accounting for over 4.5% of the GDP. And you can actually quantify such figures. We are not asking for accuracy, but then we have to know how much reindustrialization contributes to the local GDP, whether it be 3, 4, or 10. You have to give us a target. Secretary Mr. Yang has already told us the direction to which we are working. And this is very important, and you have to provide information to us. Let me add one more thing. The future industrialization policy, we have a very clear goal. For the concrete KPI, we have a very clear goal as to how many enterprises are to be introduced. In order to help the local enterprises to transform, to upgrade, how many smart production lines have to be generated. This is actually very clear. Please be more patient, and we will issue the blueprint next month so that there will be a projection figure. Mr. Tang Fei, 2 questions. One, for CEDB. In paragraph 23, the government, through different approaches, encourage local television stations and broadcasters to broadcast more programs on national education and youth development. RTHK is under the government, and it is rather easy to order the government, these departments to realize this goal. But then for the free television stations, what kind of policy does the government have in order to encourage these stations to broadcast more programs on national education and youth development? In relation to the mid-year review of licenses, will certain terms, clauses be added so that the free television stations will produce relevant programs. Have you ever considered this? Another question regarding ITIB. Of course, leading enterprises are very important, but then INT are valuable because of the talents. So the policy address emphasizing snatching talents. But then, on the 17th, the U.S. announced some policies restricting U.S. nationals or green card holders who work in China, engaging in higher-end industries. On the 13th of October, London newspaper announced that certain people could not leave the companies. And it seems that it does not touch upon Hong Kong, but then for black hat violence in 2019. Actually, de facto, the policies have been changed and there is increasing hostility. A simple question: in the face of possible or even higher-end talents being forbidden from entering Hong Kong or China, does the government have any plan to respond to this or to act in accordance with this? Regarding the 3 free television stations and the the sound broadcasters, we are conducting a mid-year review, reviewing their promises in the coming 6 years, as well as their service and requirements. This also aims to improve their services. There was a meeting on the 8th of September 2022. These stations have been requested to broadcast more programs on national education and youth development. Or probably I can invite the Commissioner for Broadcasting. Mr. Eddie Zhang. Thank you, Chair. In terms of national education, from 2021 to 2022, RTHK has actually undertaken a lot of work. And going forward, we will also step up efforts in this regard. One recent example is that for the 2020 Party Congress, a program was produced to allow students to understand clearly and more easily the information in relation to the Congress, and we will step up efforts in this regard. The other question concerns a fallback plan on manpower. Thank you, Mr. Tang Fei. This is indeed a very good question. In the policy address, it mentions in a lot of areas our general policies to attract talents. And this is the most powerful and unprecedented momentum seen so far. And I can clearly tell Mr. Tang that we are stepping up our efforts. I'd like to highlight one point. The government, in terms of attracting talents have to have a place to stay. They need to have development. So when it comes to attracting leading enterprises, there is a pool of higher-end talents, both from overseas and from local. So there is a lot of introduction of talents. They come along together with the development of industry. Thank you, Chair. When the 3 secretaries are here, I'd like to mention 3 questions. First of all, it is important to develop INT, and it is important to have talents. And manpower planning would not be completed until 2024. We really can't wait for it. There is a serious lack of talents in INT, including the government and different sectors. There is a paucity of talents. As we can see, the snatching of talents was mentioned in a policy address, and it targets university graduates and higher level talents. But then actually the INT is comprised of different levels of talents. Will you consider attracting talents from diploma holders, or we can attract people to come over to Hong Kong to study courses, program courses, certificate courses, so that we can attract them to come over to Hong Kong to work? We really can't wait. regarding free television licenses and sound broadcasters media review. I frequently received a lot of complaints in relation to sound broadcasters. There is hostile criticism against the government. I encourage diversified development. If the radio-based stations and television stations have healthy comments, healthy criticisms, they can indeed promote the development of government. But then if they have negative criticisms, how can we introduce a clause to promote the healthy development of sound broadcasters and free television stations? Regarding the other area, that is to say culture, sports, tourism, etc. Of course, I support the development of movies. And I hope that this industry will respect our country. We do not want to just develop these industries so that we do not respect our country. We receive a lot of complaints from M+ Museum. We encourage the development of arts, but then we have to respect diverse cultures. We have to respect our country. For the competition Rugby 7 this morning, a wrong national anthem was played, which angered a lot of people, including Hong Kongers as well as Chinese nationals. It would not be just a mistake. It would be something in contravention of the national security law. The government has to pursue this so as to prevent these from happening.
Who would you like to answer your question? The three directors of Bureau, please. Okay, Professor Sun first. Your first question about talents. In particular, high-end talents, stated clearly in the policy address. Each year, we would like to bring in no less than 35,000 talents, and a good proportion of that would be INT talents. In Hong Kong, the INT talents we have, they are at the high end. There are about 40,000 of them here. We like that number to go up each year. And then, how many people are actually working in the INT sector? In Shenzhen, there are 2 million people working in jobs related to INT. That includes both eye, hand, and other talents. In Hong Kong, we have a population of 7.5 million. If we become an INT center, then the rough estimate is that for people involved in INT work, both high-end and low-end, there would be over 1 million people. But then the condition is whether the sector could develop and thrive. So it's not realistic to just give a number of talents. More importantly, we should first promote the development of this industry, and then we would then have talents we could bring in talents for that. Thank you. Mr. Yao, about the midterm review report, we will look at the service commitment, performance pledge, and also conditions. We'll also ask them to do more programs on national identity, and for young people. Now, of course, there are those practitioners who may have breached the relevant code, then we'll take the necessary action. And if there is any breach of the law, we'll certainly refer the case to the police. So we will. We want the TV and sound broadcasters to do their job as they provide a public service to the public. Mr. Young, now for any industries, art, culture, sports, creative industries, showing respect for the country is the obligation, fundamental obligation of everyone. Everyone ought to respect their own countries. And if the dignity of the country is undermined, or if there are inappropriate actions taken, we must all speak out against that. Now, about what happened last night, the government has already expressed openly our discontent and our protest. And of course, we'll follow up on that case, and then we'll be giving you a more detailed update later. Mr. Sunny Ten. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. The speaker's microphone is not on. The speaker is not coming through. Sorry, the speaker's not coming through. Now, about local procurement in support of reindustrialization, that it's important that local factories get enough business. That's important, of course. Mr. Tony Chair proposed reforming the tendering system to support local manufacturers. It was a motion debate last year. So how does the government help private and public sectors so that there will be more trial of new products and we could support the local I&T sector, and also there should be a better chance for them to attend tendering exercise, to join a tendering exercise. Now, Mr. Yeung mentioned fashion design at the end of his speech. I'm grateful to you for that, but please take fashion design more seriously, because it's very important carrier of arts and culture. It could showcase our soft power. It also could promote Chinese culture and help us tell a good story about Hong Kong and a good story about China too. Now, in the past 5 years, the recurrent expenditure for the art, culture, and creative industries has gone up by 40%. Now, if you support Hong Kong designs, such as the Hong Kong Design Center, or in the past 5 years or in the future, would there be more support to such design sectors, including fashion design and so on? First, on innovation. Thank you for your very good question. Supporting the development of local industries is important for us. Last week, I made an open appeal to government departments to give priority to local products. And then, can I invite also Mr. Lam to answer your questions from Oxio. Now, last year, we set up government lab on smart this invention. So for local sector in particular, local startups, there could be matching between them and government departments' needs. For example, if there are certain product or service solution demands for departments, then the sector could offer solutions. As at October 2022, there are already some 70 needs for solutions, and we found solutions from the local sector. So we have to try out this arrangement, and then we're giving resources to departments so they could use the resources for POC, that is proof of concept testing, and then they will see that actually the solution suits our needs. And then when they actually adopt the solution, then we will give them additional funding. So that's one way to go about it. The other way is that under the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department, they also have I&T platform. Now for government departments, public sectors, and electrical and mechanical engineering sectors, they may have put forward some ideas about what they need, and then we'll see again how these needs could be met by the local industries. There will be they also have some sort of a matching scheme. But the biggest difference between their scheme and ours is that we focus more on software, and the MSD focuses more on hardware. So together, we hope that we could help the sector, in particular SMEs and local startups, to expand the market so that their products could be adopted for use by the government, and then eventually they could promote their products to the private sector too. Mr. Yeung, on fashion design. Or design, of course, is an important aspect of the creative industries. It could be fashion design and other designs. Even with buildings, there are design elements involved, and this we're promoting that as well. Now, apart from specific industries, perhaps I could invite Great Hong Kong to tell you specifically what we've done in relation to fashion. But then we are also going to promote more collaboration with different sectors. For example, we have worked with Hong Kong Ballet with a ballet group on fashion design and so on. Perhaps I will invite Mr. Victor Tsang of the Create Hong Kong to tell us more. Thank you. First on fashion. In 2016, the Hong Kong Design Centre launched an incubation program for fashion startups. So far, about 30 SMEs have been given help. And each year at the Design Centre, we have this Fashion Asia event for influential figures around the world in the fashion scene. They're invited here to tell us about how we could promote the development of the fashion industry. And also the Create Hong Kong has been launching various projects through the Create Smart initiative to promote the development of local and budding fashion designers. For example, budding fashion designers will be taken to overseas fairs and fashion shows, and there are also local fashion shows, and also we're promoting Juxtapose events, which is the virtual and physical fashion shows. There's also an item on virtual fabrics. There's also and then there's another training scheme for fashion masters. So we've invited master fashion designers from London to do training for local people. And then there are, of course, fashion design competitions, summits. Through SIPA, there is this other service of production of templates and so on. Now, in 2024, the Hong Kong Design Centre will develop a fashion and design centre in Sam Shui Po. We'll see what we can do together with the sector, so there could be more cross-sectoral collaboration to promote fashion design in Hong Kong. The Secretary mentioned cross-sectoral events in 2019. There's a crossover between local fashion designers and the music sector. We also worked with the Hong Kong Ballet Group to design ballet costumes for ballet dancers. In 2018, for arts directors and new actors and actresses, we also work with them to help them design costumes and to also design their images and so on. Well, I think you've run out of time. We're very interested in that, but I think the public actually don't know much about it. In terms of information dissemination, I wonder if you could do a bit more. I've seen an APA. I've seen that at the APA say if their students have any performances or concerts, we have a program. They have a catalog to tell people what they are doing. With fashion, I believe the general public would be interested. So if you could promote the events, it will help to support the development of the industry. Thank you. Next, Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank the SL government under the leadership of the CE and secretaries. You attach great importance to reindustrialization. So there is much coverage of reindustrialization in the policy address, and many of the suggestions made by the industrial sector have been taken on board. I would like to thank the Bureau for that. Now, I have a number of questions. In the policy address, it's mentioned that the post of Commissioner for Industry would be created. What about the recruitment of this post holder? Are you going to do internal recruitment within the civil service, or would you consider recruiting someone with relevant experience outside of government? Because then you could bring in talent, and we can tap the experience of such talents and to promote reindustrialization? That's my first question. Now, second question, you say that you have a KPI that is 100 enterprises in 5 years. Well, at least it's good to try that. And people know what the time frame is and when, how many enterprises we could bring in. So in the past, the government would rarely come up with such concrete figures. I think it's a good thing. Now, for these 100 enterprises, I'm sure you will have focus certain. You have in mind certain groups. What about semiconductor sector? For the new generation semiconductors, it's possible for Hong Kong to do some of the advanced manufacturing. So would you also cover such enterprises in the scheme? Third question, the talent research hub. Next year, you're going to increase the allowance amount. But do you have any figures? So we know how many research talents are brought to Hong Kong each year. Can you give us the figures so we have a better idea of the scenario? 3 questions, Professor Sun.
问题，第一个问题，工业专员，我想请常秘麦德伟先生回答。第二个问题我来回答。第三个问題，我想請創新科技署署長林婷婷女士回答。第一個問題。
好，秘書長。
係，多謝主席。多謝周浩鼎議員嘅問題。周議員提及嗰個工業專員呢個咧，就一個好好嘅一個課題嚟嘅。咁我哋想設立呢個工業專員嘅目的咧，就希望佢可以專責專職，去到就住我哋點樣協助嗰個業界升級轉型應用科技方面咧，係協助到業界嘅工作。咁當然咧，就係我哋希望呢位工業專員咧，一方面咧。
The Commissioner for Industry will understand the difficulties facing the industry, as well as knowledge about the industry. We hope that the colleague will have an idea about the workings of the government. So when we fill this position, we would like to adopt a broader approach. That is to say, we would like to have an open recruitment. This is our idea. Whether it be within or outside the civil service team, we will consider the person as long as they are suitable, and we are still formulating the plan, and we hope to table to the Legislative Council Manpower Subcommittee and the Financial Committee for consideration, and we will start the recruitment exercise as soon as it is ready. So what is the main point? Is there any new generation semiconductor regarding the future industry development? The policy address clearly mentions some areas, advanced manufacturing, and when you mention the third generation semiconductor, it falls under the category of advanced industry for AI. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for being concerned about semiconductor, which is our future. And this is also an important direction. Last month, Singaporean government made it clear that $650 million have to be invested. Korea is already investing as well. This is of concern because it represents a lot of advantages, and we are also concerned about this. So whether there is any semiconductor, you will know soon. Regarding the INT Talent Hub. Thank you, Chair. In this regard, for bachelor holders, master holders, and doctoral holders, we are offering 18,000, 21,000, and 32,000 as subsidies, and we will increase these amounts starting next April. These 3 amounts we will increase to 20,000, 23,000, and 35,000 respectively. For doctoral degree holders, we will issued an additional living allowance, $10,000 on a monthly basis. I will supplement the figures in a moment later. But then when it comes to the research INT hub, it is for a period of 3 years. The expenditure was 350 million and 340 million respectively in 2021 and 2022. And these schemes are well received, and I will supplement the figures in a moment. The next one. Mr. Duncan Chill. And I welcome the contents and the policy address, and I would like to exchange views with the departments. First of all, for ITIB, and then I will ask CEDB. A member asked about the 100 million matching fund, the 10 billion matching fund. I understand that a lot of educational institutions will need matching. There are two phases, some earlier and some at a later stage. That is to say, more mature projects. The Secretary mentioned a matching basis. That is to say, we only work on projects recognized by the industry. But then at university, some earlier stage projects, it is difficult to adopt a one-on-one basis as it takes a rather long time. For matching, will there be different ratios for different stages? It is not easy to find a matching partner for earlier stage. The program may run for 5 years, but then will all projects have to be submitted within the first year? It actually takes time for things to come to fruition. So can they report 2 years later, for example? It takes time for schools to make preparation so that schools do not have to lay out all the plans within 1 year. So this is the direction of 1+. The other question concerns manpower. I hope that the government, well, when we talk about the snatching of talents, we really need to act. We really need to take action to snatch talents, instead of just having more approval. And the roadmap will not be available until 2024. And by that time, all unicorns will probably have gone. We can actually study where the manpower gap is. For such a large gap, then we will have to consider younger researchers. We need to have a blueprint. Is there any government project through which we could introduce talents whom we can groom to be the next batch of the talents? These are the two questions from me. The second question was answered by Professor Shen Dong. The blueprint will be issued later. Let's see if he has anything else to add. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the suggestion made by Mr. Chiu. The project, whether it is 3+2 or 2+3, we have enough flexibility in this respect, and we can decide depending on different circumstances. One of the purposes of the schemes is to transform and realize the research fruits, and we need to, at the university level, transform and realize a certain number of projects. But then we think 3 years, 2 years, this time frame is reasonable. On a matching basis, we can understand the problem you mentioned. We are still discussing these issues. We are of the view that we are result-oriented. In the process, if there is flexibility, we will hit the views of different universities. In short, we hope that the sectors can take part in this project as soon as possible, at the first chance. When we select projects, we also have to heed the participation within the community, apart from technology, etc. That is to say, whether it is worth investment. In terms of talents, I would like to emphasize that this is a systematic engineering. This would not be completed just by one single department. The government sees this as the snatching of talents and puts it at the top of the agenda. It takes time to groom talents. Indeed, we value talents. We are working towards the right direction. We have taken the right step. And we have to consolidate leading enterprises and other enterprises, then talents will naturally come. We are not using this as an excuse, but then we will spare no pains to attract talents. I myself called overseas institutions to snatch talents, and now it is the secretary who calls to snatch talents. We are all working on this. Thank you, the secretary, for doing all this yourself to snatch talents. But when it comes to recruiting higher-end talents, can this gap be plugged? It takes 7 years to make an application, but then for the United States, for example, chipset, when there is suspicion, access can be frozen, passport can also be seized. Is there any room? For example, Singapore craves talents, then Singapore can immediately issue a passport. Otherwise, those people will fall between two stools. Is there any room for us to issue a passport right away? Strictly speaking, I'm not in a position to answer this question, but I can share my own personal experience. Permanent residents have to live for at least 7 years before they can obtain a passport. This is provided by the basic law. So obtaining a passport, this might be difficult, but then the government is willing to make extra special arrangements to bring convenience to higher-end talents. Reverend Kun, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the smart city in the policy address. But then it seems that we are lagging behind when it comes to data science. Some will be in 2025 and 2023. Some citizens are concerned about the abuse of data. Earlier on, we found for smart lamppost or even leave home safe, different controversies were aroused. I think some of them are unreasonable, but then if citizens are concerned, will problems in relation to privacy be addressed? Will we follow the example of the mainland? Network security law, personal particulars law, will the government follow these examples so that we can give a peace of mind to citizens? Professor Sun Dong. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members' question. I will defer to Mr. Lam to answer this question. Government Chief Information Officer. Open data policy was made available in 2018. And since 2019, different departments have been opening up different data, and there is indeed a large growth of data. And there were 21 billion data downloading. And for this year alone, over 30 billion download rates. And we will take forward this development. According to the needs of citizens and enterprises, we will open up even more data to allow different enterprises to reuse the data so that citizens can obtain new services, especially for some well-received services, for example, public transport usage, or when it comes to meteorological services. These are very much well-received by citizens. We will take forward the development of these data. We will ask more departments to open up these data. When it comes to privacy, personal privacy will actually not be involved. For example, if the data involve personal particulars, they will not be directly opened up. Instead, the data, if they can be opened up, will be consolidated, aggregated, after which they will only be made available. For example, statistical data are an example. A lot of statistics are available in the government, but then personal particulars will not be made available. The statistics are for R&D and the markets. Thank you, Chair. Any follow-up question for Reverend Peter Kuhn? When it comes to collecting data, some citizens are concerned, so I'd like to ask about this respect. We are actually strictly following the guidelines in relation to privacy protection in the course of collecting data. When government collects data, there is always a notice in relation to privacy so that citizens will know clearly that their personal data will be collected. It is only after they are made known to this that they will use this application. And the collection of data will not be excessive. We are just collecting suitable, appropriate amounts of data. The next one. Ms. Yong, I support, as the policy stated, to enrich the talent pool, including the introduction of an office in relation to talents and how we can make arrangements for their children and their livelihood. We are more concerned about their living arrangements of their spouses. If we can do more in this regard, that is to say, when their whole families come over to Hong Kong, we can also take care of their families, and this is worth encouraging. And there will be an innovation technology in Santin Technopole. Some will stay in Shenzhen and in the vicinity of Shenzhen 1, Nanshan. Nanshan has a vast area, whether it be Tencent or not. A lot of them are in Nanshan area. It takes some 1 hour for them to go from Nanshan. This is a very long period of time. So for those to come over to Hong Kong to expand their businesses, this is a very long period of time. Would it be possible for it to be near Hong Kong, near Shenzhen Bay? That is to say, Lau Fao Shan Lower Estate. Chair, you might be familiar with this area. So how to make conservation in relation to Nanshan, Lau Fao Shan, Ha Chun. So is it possible to be right near Nanshan so that we can have the base in Hong Kong so that some R&D talents will travel back and forth? It only takes them a smaller amount of time for them to come over to Hong Kong from where they are. So how we can encourage the movement of people? We now have to borrow talent from Shenzhen. So is it possible for us to attract talents from Shenzhen to come over to Hong Kong? It seems that these concerns transport, infrastructures. And Professor Sun Dong, can you answer this question? Because Castle Peak is near Nanshan. Let me try to answer this question, tell you my thoughts. The first question concerns spouses and talents. The policy address makes it clear we have to provide one-stop services, including their families and children, so that we can exhibit our care for the whole family, so that, Ms. Young, you can rest assured. In relation to the geographic location of INT industries, in the policy address, it is clear that we have defined Lo, Wu, and Santin are the center to create the whole INT circle. For ecosystem circle and the life circle, there are also definitions. The reason why we have to give them a definition is that in 2011, the LMC loop, an agreement was entered into to establish an INT development center. The last term government also defined Shantin Technology Center would be the headquarters of INT industries. The policy address of the current term government extends the area to other areas, defining them as the overall INT circle. We also have a very close interaction with Shenzhen. They are actually planning ahead, and a lot of R&D activities will take place in that area. When it comes to Shanghai, they will have their own reasonable layouts. For Hong Kong, we will have a synergy development. This is our development in the general direction. Dr. Low, there is a paucity of land as well as talents. And these two aspects were mentioned in the committees. Land supply, well, we can have hopes because the loop is being worked on, but then it is indeed very slow. For Shantin Technology Center, it will occupy a much larger area of land, but then actually for manpower, this is a rather serious issue. The policy address does not skirt around this issue, and a lot of concrete measures were laid out, including how we can attract the leading talents, including 2.5 million annual salaries, 100 odd globally acclaimed eminent universities. But then, how can we define leading? There is an army, a pool of talents for them to lead. If there is no soldier, whom do they lead? Are they going to come over to Hong Kong on their own? What we are lacking is not those earning 2.5 million per annum. We are really lacking those earning 250,000 annual salaries. Probably they are university graduates, irrespective of the industry they will engage in. These salaries pales in comparison. Over the last 10 to 12 months, 120,000 drop of the population was seen. And there is a decrease of 140,000 labor force. I believe that all the secretaries cannot give me an answer today because this is in relation to the general population policy. But then I cannot overestimate the severity of the issue here because this is serious across all sectors. And we cannot sidestep this issue. In respect of the INT talents, any more views from the secretaries? One of the considerations in relation to whether they will come over to Hong Kong, as mentioned in the discussion paper, the InnoCell, accommodation spaces will be provided. I'm in support of this, but then we have to do it fast. Professor Sun Dong, this question is answered by a lot of members, and we are looking forward to the release of the blueprint. Is there any new plan to attract the hikikomori to come over to work? Thank you for the questions. The first on land, second on manpower. Land resources are the most valuable resources in Hong Kong, and they are also what we can attract the leading enterprises. They are the most powerful resources. Our plan is that we have to increase land supplied when it comes to INT land. For example, in Tai Po, the second center will be established and commissioned in the coming few years. Cyberport will also be extended in the hope of increasing by at least 100,000 hectares of land area. The greatest land supply, of course, is in the northern metropolis. In 2023, according to our plan, we hope that in the second half of the year, some land will be released for public tendering. In relation to Santin, we hope that we can, as soon as possible, or even earlier than 2024, we can have some land made available. We are working in full steam towards this goal. Apart from land resources, talents are also one important question. I think this question has already bugged Hong Kong for a long period of time. We cannot bank on Hong Kong to have a perfect solution within 2 or 3 months. But then what is important is that the government has to realize this problem so that we know how to go forward, including the questions that we mentioned today. They are in relation to talents. It is important that we have to take the first step forward. As long as we can take this first step forward, and with the support from different sectors, we only have this certain number of people. We have to obtain the support from the members of the LegCo. Only by then can we have a greater aspirations for the future development of Hong Kong. This is one I want to bring out. Thank you, Chair. Regarding RTHK, I've come to realize that RTHK has increased the number of shows, including the introduction of the situations in China, the legal system, knowledge about the country, and I recognize all these efforts. But then teenagers are influenced and egged on by some external forces to take part in the 2019 black-clad violence events. Some of them were imprisoned, moved overseas, or even ran away to overseas places. Some of these teenagers are very regretful. President Xi, on the 1st of July, in his remarks, said that we have to show our care for the younger generations. Will RTHK, in light of the black-clad violence, those imprisoned or fleeing overseas, will more programs be created to tell the stories and tell how their mindset changed so that we have a better understanding of their stories? So that for teenagers living in Hong Kong, we can solve their own queries, clear their doubts, and we can also create vibes of tolerance in the community. I think we are lacking these. Given the strong production power of RTHK, can it serve this purpose? Can it do this? And I would defer to Mr. Chung, Director of Broadcasting. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ma's comments. We will actively consider this view. The Segregated Bureau earlier on had a program, as Mr. Ma said. Some teenagers were interviewed. These teenagers flouted the law earlier on, and they shared their stories on RTHK. We think that this is a very good suggestion. If we can do this, we will definitely follow up on this. On a broader spectrum, we are also exploring how we can come into contact with more teenagers. Our production team is actually planning a reform, how we can draw nearer teenagers. We will step up our efforts on this front.
Anything else? You've only used up 2 minutes 49 seconds. Apart from producing more programs, you could have more communication and contact with young people. And, some of the young people do have the capabilities to be involved in production, so they could tell you about their experience, their thinking firsthand. that's more important, so they could get involved in production. And because now you're just interviewing them, so they're not able to tell you the story firsthand. Some may have gone through much soul searching in the process, and there are still young people with grievances, so I think this would help a lot. So can you do more so you could have a better touch on reality? Secretary? Yes, I will look into that. Thank you. Perhaps our ETOs and Hong Kong offices in Canada and the UK, you could keep in close liaison with them. You know, Hong Kong has good stories, but it's important that these stories get to young people temporarily living in those places. Next, Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask about the RTHK as well. Now, after the reform, of course, many now think the RTHK is very positive in its programming, and there's also a bigger diversity of programs, so it's a big improvement, and we support that. But then for a long time, RTHK has been complaining that their facilities are rather dilapidated. I sometimes would go there for programs, and I do see that the place is a bit run down. So with these old facilities, how can you upgrade them? Now, a question for Mr. Kevin Yeung on culture, sports, and development. I will support all such developments because culture helps our mind, and sports of course helps our body, and they will help to bring people together. So it's not just about physical health, there's also mental well-being involved. Yesterday, at the Asian Rugby Games, that, you know, instead of playing the national anthem, a song for the representing the black violence was played. All members of this council have expressed our anger. Many have made statements. So I would like to ask Mr. Yeung how you're going to follow up on this case. That's the first point. Secondly, for athletes representing Hong Kong in international tournaments, is there any guidelines? So in relation to the playing of national anthems or the display of the national flag? Now, as for a second question, is not really part of this panel, but still, Mr. Yeung gave a brief response. But I won't stop the Secretary from taking up these two questions, though. First, about RTHK. We are considering the matter, and together with Mr. Eddie Cheung, the Director of Broadcasting, we will consider the relocation of RTHK and so on. So we will come up with some recommendation after we study the issue. Mr. Chairman, second question, as you said, I gave a brief response earlier, because this panel is not to take up this matter. Now, in half an hour or so, the relevant panel will be having a meeting, so I'm sure there will be more discussion there. Perhaps I will leave it to the next panel. Yes, you could ask the question again in the other panel. So I'm asking questions for the first time. It's my turn. CDB and also the Director of Broadcasting. I think, you know, Radio 5, they do have some good programs. Unfortunately, they are not broadcast as a radio program, but rather they could only be accessed on the phone or with internet. But then people have told me that many are very interested in these programs. You know, for the older audience, they may not use their mobile phone to tune in. It's easy for them to tune in with a radio. Especially these are radio programs, broadcasting programs. If they're popular, and if you want to a bigger audience, then it's better that it's broadcast as over the air as a radio program. That's for your consideration. Now, second question for Mr. Yeung. The Arts Festival is going into its 51st year. And there's actually an Arts Festival limited company. But perhaps because it's got a long history, it's now become more rigid in a way, and it's no longer as appealing. We're not saying that we don't enjoy the Arts Festival. Many people in Hong Kong love arts. Arts Festival, has been doing rather well, but perhaps in recent years there are other distractions. So the work of the Arts Festival is overshadowed. Would you consider injecting new elements into the festival or the company, so that this company would be more active and it could better promote art and culture? And then if they do productions, they could add a logo so people know this is a production promoted by the Arts Festival. So we could make the programs more appealing. And there is also a focus. Mr. Young. In February, March, the Arts Festival will present a series of programs for the arts and cultural scene. There is now there are vibrant activities and there's a diversity of activities. So maybe sometimes you think, well, for the Arts Festival, maybe it's less appealing now. But if you look at the program lineup of the Arts Festival, we know that it's very popular. There's still many people buying tickets. For many of the good programs, it's hard actually to get a ticket. And as the chairman pointed out, with any event, there is need to have continuous reform. We have to regard to the market. We must meet the needs of the public as far as possible. So we are more than happy to discuss with them their long-term plans. Mr. Yao, do you have anything to add? Thank you for your suggestion. So we'll talk to them to see if we could consider any new ideas. Next, second round, Mr. Duncan Chu and Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. We could still allow 4 minutes each for questions and answers. And then we'll be able to finish this meeting punctually at 4:30 p.m. Oh, sorry, 4:15. In that case, then 2 minutes questions and answers. So I'm always flexible. Okay, short question from Mr. Yao. From Mr. Yao. Your turn first? Yes, me first. Thank you. Now, about CDB, the Oasis, what would be the establishment be like? Because there are different departments, it covers INT, it covers the Labour and Welfare Bureau. Would there be any organization? For example, would there be reorganization of the Invest Hong Kong to do that, or would you set up a new establishment? How do you cover different departments? Because when you bring in enterprises, there are capital talents involved, and you are providing one-stop service. How do you make this work? And my second question, about the mobile services for buildings. They will be part of the basic facilities of building, but it's about buildings in future. This base stations could help to make up for gaps in the mobile phone service sector. But what about other existing buildings? Because some buildings are concerned or they have a wrong understanding about radiation. And of course, our sector could prove that radiation is not a serious problem. With radio safety, there's mention of OFCA, that it will conduct regular tests and the results are announced to the public. So could there be more promotion publicity, because it's really about misunderstanding. That's why many private buildings, it's not possible for us to set up the 5G base stations. So could you do more publicity? And then for government premises or buildings, in the paper it says that there are 100,000 suitable government venues. But then even when operators go into these venues, they encounter problems. maybe they allow you to go into the venue, but they don't give you power supply, and then they say the FGD will say you can't put it here, you can't put it there. So for these 1,000 venues, how do you make sure that people could actually set up base stations there? There are two questions. I'll take the first question, and then Ofka will take up the second question. About Oasis, we are still planning the office. The office will be led by the FS. We'll be making use of the resources of the Invest Hong Kong and overseas ETOs for us to set up the Oasis. And then we will staff the Oasis with resources from those parties I just mentioned, and then we'll then set the work plan and the goals and so on. So we'll complete this work this year, and then different bureau and departments, that is the ITIB or FSTB and so on, we will be identifying leading enterprises together and also see how we could bring in talents. Second question, I don't think we have time. I'll have to allow the other question to ask question. Dr. Loy Kwok. Thank you. RTHK. On the 15th of May 2019, there was a news report about this meeting, and the heading was that they complained that RTHK is wasting resources, and then we members criticized the RTHK. I couldn't, and then I think they show photos of a few turtles because saying that we're moving too slowly, and then there's another. Another time I asked my assistant to watch what they're showing, and they show that there is this cake rising very slowly in an oven. And then the director of broadcasting responded to me that slow TV, many people like watching such programs, and I was flabbergasted. Anyway, today, this first time I have to commend the RTHK, paragraph 26. It says here that we must tell the Hong Kong story and the China story well. And I'm excited to read that and encouraged to read that. It says that they're going to have short videos. That is and then they will use a simple and efficient approach so the public will learn about subjects of concern to the public. SPSM is, of course, a subject that the public should learn about. In terms of technology or industry and so on, we have a lot of good developments. Shouldn't we ask RTHK to do some promotion videos for us? And then at the time was told that it's all about editorial independence. So now you have changed your attitudes. I hope very much you will use all these other means to help to promote Hong Kong. We have many good products in Hong Kong. For a mobile phone, the mobile phone screen. Actually, the leading company manufacturing the screens is a Hong Kong company. So we need to tell young people about that, in particular young people. Okay, there's no need to respond. You just need to, take heed of the advice. Okay, 1 minute 30 seconds, Ms. Elizabeth Quat. Well, Mr. Yao did not answer my earlier question about the midterm review of free domestic TV and sound broadcaster licenses. So how can you make sure that they would not deliberately show government's work in a poor light? So would you include any clauses in their license so they can't do that? In the midterm review, we see whether it's appropriate to include these clauses and terms so that all these licensees will comply with the law of Hong Kong and not endanger national safety. About internet service for rural villages, you say 120 villages will see optic fiber connection to the periphery of the village, but then still the service cannot go into domestic units. How do you make that happen so villagers could enjoy high-speed internet service? Perhaps the Director General of Communications could explain that. Now, we are now doing works for 235 villages, and for 90% of the villages, the contractors would actually provide 500 megahertz or 1 gig broadband fibers into the villages. And so far, progress is satisfactory. By the end of this year, about half or 120 villages will be able to enjoy high-speed internet service. If there are still complaints, just go to the Director General of Communications. Okay, that's all the time we have today. We'd like to thank the Bureau to come and explain the various policies to us, but please, you need to speed up your work on many fronts. Anything else under AOB? No? Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.